Straight all day.
You are now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of wait for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques, all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called work on your game. My name is Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is boring done consistently is what leads to special. All right, if you want to do special things, you got to be boring and you got to do those things consistently. And I'll explain what I mean by this and why this is a topic in one moment. First of all, let me remind everybody from what you heard in the intro of the show that I have a daily motivation text message that I send out for free to everyone in my text community. If you're listening to this show, you should be in my text community and you can engage with me directly by anything that you hear on this show by texting me. So hit me at that number, again, 305-384-6894. Now let's get into today's topic, which is boring done consistently is what will make your work special. This masterclass is really all about the monotonous, tedious, repetitive consistency that can and will create amazing outcomes, period. That's what I'm trying to sell you on here today. And if you're able to stick to this program long enough, you will see it through to results. So what I'm going to sell you on here today is why you need to do this, even though many of you think this is what you need to do anyway, but the problem is you haven't been doing it. So that's what we got to get through to you here. Not that you need to understand the concept, but why you need to stick to the concept. That's the part that people are coming up short on. So let's get into it. Point number one. Topic again is boring done consistently equals special. Number one, contrary to popular belief, the most successful people are actually, for the most part, boring, repetitive, monotonous, and unexciting. Did you know that? That the most successful people are, for the most part, pretty boring in what they do? And here's why. Because they are doing the same things the same way every time. They have certain standards and disciplines and certain things that they execute on, and they execute on them over and over and over again every day without fail. While the results and the show, like the stuff that you get to see about them, stuff that they put forward to the world might look exciting and fun, and they probably are. Understand that the majority of the work, 90% of the stuff that creates those results, the stuff that you see, is produced by consistent, repetitive, and monotonous work. One drawback of social media, there are good things about it, and one drawback is we are all guilty of putting forward 90% highlights and maybe 10% of the actual work. I'm talking about the real work, not the version of the work that we can make ourselves look good with. We're all good at that too. I'm talking about the part that's actually hard. We're all guilty of just showing the parts that make us look good, but not the parts that is the real work. I'm talking about the real work, stuff you don't want on camera. What the actual truth is that all of our lives and businesses are operated in the exact opposite format. 10% of what we do over the course of a day. I'm talking people who are in that influencer space, people who are out there making it happen. Anybody you see who you're looking at them like, man, they got it. Like they're making money, they got fans, they got customers, they're really doing their thing. I hope I can get to that level in what I do one day. Those people, 10% of what they do is highlights. 90% of what they do is the work. Now remember that 10-to-1 ratio I told you about not too long ago. When I was playing ball, it was 10 practices for every one game. And that was being generous. It was usually like 25 practices to every one game. That's how it really is. The internet will make you think that 80% of people's lives are highlights. No, they're not. No, what they put out is highlights. But how they actually live, if they actually have the success that they're showing you, it's much closer to what I said. 10% highlights, if that. 90% work. 90% work is just the part, or the highlight part, excuse me. See, that's the part that everybody notices. That's the part that people like to pay attention to because it's fun and it's exciting and that's enticing. All right, if you want to sell people on doing what you do, you better show them the highlights. Don't show them the work because most people ain't signing up for that. Point number two. Today's topic again is boring done consistently equals special. This is basically a mathematical equation. Number two, another reason why doing boring stuff is special is by the law of contrast. What is the law of contrast? The law of contrast states simply, if you do opposite of what everyone else is doing, you will stand out. Most people do not have the discipline to do anything consistently over an extended period of time. Anything. People don't have the discipline to work out, They don't have the discipline to eat right. They don't have the discipline to build a business, the discipline to build a relationship, the discipline to name anything else that you've been trying to do in your life that you have failed in consistency at, and all of us have them. And this is the point, right? That basically illustrates my point, the fact that you can name something. All right, people just don't have discipline. People are undisciplined. Actually, people have discipline, but they don't have discipline for the things they want. So here's what you need to understand. No matter how exciting a job, business, or lifestyle appears to be from the outside looking in, every single thing in life gets boring if it's done often enough or experienced frequently enough. Name anything that you think would be an amazing thing to do, an amazing person to date, an amazing meal to eat, an amazing food to try, an amazing fill in the blank to fill in the blank. Fill in the blank with a noun and fill in the blank with a verb. Anything you think would be amazing to experience, if you experienced enough of it, it would eventually get boring. Guaranteed. There's nothing that stays exciting forever. Nothing. So no matter what you get involved in, the novelty and the newness of that thing will wear off, and you're going to need more than just excitement to get yourself out of bed and do your job in the morning. And here's the truth that I'll stand on. You can make yourself special by simply outlasting everyone else through simple persistence and discipline. You want to outlast your competition, all you got to do is be more consistent and more disciplined than they are. Can you do that? If you can do that, then you can have an advantage over most of your competition. Just be consistent, persistent, and disciplined. If you are not familiar with the law of contrast, again, explained it already, but look at what everybody else is doing and do something different. You want to stand out from the crowd, just look at what the average person's doing, which is what everybody else will be doing as well, and do the opposite of that. Now this sounds, again, it's a very simple idea, but it's hard for people to execute on this. This is the disclaimer to that point. It's hard for people to execute on this because it's hard to do something that's so different from what everybody else is doing, because you're going to feel like, all right, am I doing something wrong here because nobody else is doing the same thing as me? And it's hard for people to make themselves stand out from the crowd intentionally. That requires a certain level of audacity to just do different from everybody else, even if you have strong reasons to believe that doing different is actually smart. It's just that human beings are social creatures, right? We want to be part of the tribe. It's ingrained in us. It's part of our wiring, our lizard brain wiring, that we want to be part of the tribe. So when we find ourselves excluded from the tribe, even by a decision that we consciously made, it still feels a little bit uncomfortable. And for some people, it feels very uncomfortable. And for those people for whom it's very uncomfortable, you know, because they never do anything different from what everybody else is doing. They are simply followers. All right, and this is why social media is so popular, because everybody's trying to gain what? Followers. And followers are a thing that everybody can get. Why is it such a big thing to get so many followers? Because there's so many willing followers out there. There ain't that many leaders. It's a whole bunch of followers and a few leaders. Now, so the way social media has it set up, and they call the people who have all the followers, what they call them? They call them influencers. They influence the followers to do whatever the influencer is doing, or whatever all the other followers are doing. They get these sheep to flock and just do what everybody else is doing. So I don't think social media had that specific idea in mind when they made this, but they might have, because there's some smart people over there engineering these programs. But it's artful justice that it came out the way that it did. It's supposed to be like that, the way it actually turned out. By being different from everyone else, folks, this is the law of contrast, you stand out by default. You don't even have to be good. When you follow the law of contrast, you don't even have to be good. And this can apply in any aspect of life. I'm simply applying it to persistence and discipline, but you could apply this to anything, okay? If you just do different from what everybody else is doing, you will stand out. Now, hopefully you're right at the same time. Sixers, the former guy who did, I don't know what specifically his job was, I think it was the president, the guy on the Sixers named Sam Hinkie. I talked about him in episode 616, which is called Trust and Follow the Process. Let me make sure that was the right episode. Yes, episode 616. He had the Sixers following this thing that he called the process. It was basically, the team was really bad for several years, and every year, because they were so bad, they got a really high draft pick, and then they would draft really good players, the pick of the litter, and hopefully some of those good players became superstars, and Sixers would eventually be good. Sixers are actually good now. From that process, they got Joel Embiid, who became the best player out of that whole thing, but they drafted a whole bunch of guys, Nerlens Noel, Michael Carter-Williams, Jahlil Okafor, Ben Simmons, who are no longer with the team, and Ben is the only one besides Embiid who actually became an all-star. But then Ben didn't want to play for the Sixers anymore, and who knows what his status is as a basketball player, period, right now. But the whole thing was Sam Hinkie's whole thing. When he left the Sixers and resigned, he wrote this letter. It's a 12-page letter, and you should all look it up. It's called Sam Hinkie. Look up Sam Hinkie resignation letter. Just Google that. His last name is Hinkie, Hinke, and look up his resignation letter. It's a 12-page PDF. And one of the things that he talks about is that when you go against the grain, you see everybody doing one thing, and you use that law of contrast and go against the grain, you not only need to be different, but you also got to be right. Because if you're wrong by going against the grain, well, nobody cares. Now, people might laugh at you, you might get completely ignored, but you didn't actually achieve anything. But if you go against the grain and you're different and you're right, that's when great things happen. All right, that's when you bet on the stock that has been down for 5 years, and then it just bounces back and goes up 1,000%, and you bet big on it. Now you're rich. All right, so it's betting against the grain, but also being right when you bet against the grain. And you don't have to be right every time. Sometimes in life, you only got to be right once if you bet big enough. So this can apply in any aspect of life. To give you an example here, again, we're talking about persistence and discipline. I was a talented basketball player, but there were plenty of basketball players who had more talent than me, and thus they had more opportunity than me because of their talent. But what they didn't have was persistence and discipline, so they blew their opportunities. And when they blew their opportunities, some of those opportunities became available to people like me with a little bit less talent than they had. I had talent, but a little bit less than them. So while I had to have a certain baseline of talent in order to even be eligible, it's not like I was getting drafted out of high school by the Chicago Bulls. Right? Players who are on that level of talent, okay, they can make it even if they don't have discipline. All right, players on the next tier, they can't make it without discipline. That was me. I was on that next tier where without discipline, I would not have made it. Moving on, point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is boring things done consistently equals special results. Number 3, what makes your boring, monotonous consistency special is the fact that other human beings will come to expect, rely, and depend on it, and thusly, in turn, you. When you are boring, monotonous, and consistent, what happens is people will start to notice you. They will notice what they're getting from you. They'll notice how consistent you are. They'll come to expect certain things from you. They'll start to predict certain things of you, and it's actually a good thing. It's not a bad thing, folks. There are some areas in which you want to be unpredictable and mysterious, and there's some areas where you want to be very, very deliberate and monotonous. All right, there's a mix here. There's an art and a science to this. In other words, when you're giving the marketplace what they want that same thing over and over and over again and no changes. When you're giving the marketplace what they want, do not change the formula. Remember that human beings, including you and I, are creatures of habits. We like things that we can predict, things that are the same every time, things that are consistent with very little variance. We like to know exactly what's going to happen. We do not like surprises, and we definitely will not subsidize surprises. We will not pay for them. So when you show that you can be consistent at the thing that you do, you don't need to be the best at it. Just being consistent is good enough for 95% of the population. In a word, many people in the world say that they want the best of everything, right? You talk to people, you want the best this, I want the best trainer, I want the best food, I want to have the best family, I want the best car. A lot of people say they want the best of everything, but however, most people are okay with good enough as long as that good enough is consistent and predictable. This is a fact. Everybody says they want the best if you ask them, but if you look at their actions, most people are okay with, and they will live a happy life and die fine, maybe happy, maybe fine, as long as your okayness is consistent and dependable. Most people are okay with consistent, dependable stuff, even if it's not the best. This is why the average is indeed the average. This is the reason why the masses are the masses. This is the reason why the bottom of the pyramid is the largest part of the pyramid, because most people are okay with average. I'm not even saying this as a condemnation of people, because by law, there's some average people who are listening to this show right now, and is too many of them for there not to be. Right? It's easier to be on that level, and there are simply just more people there. That's where the masses are at. So if you want to reach the masses with your product or service, you better speak to them on their level. Now you got to be able to communicate with them on a level that they're thinking, not the level that you think. While yes, everybody would like to be at the super highest level. Again, if you ask anybody, most people will say yeah. Most people will accept being good enough, and they will accept good enough stuff too. Notice the verbiage I'm using here. Getting to and staying at an above average level, folks, has to be highly intentional. And the fact of the matter is, most people are not willing to execute on those intentions. I mean, most people want the outcome, but they don't want to do the work in order to get the outcome. And therefore, most people never get the outcome because they don't do the work. So understanding that consistency and monotony, I'm not talking about how good you got to be consistently and monotonously. I'm just talking about being consistent, period. Just getting to a level and being that all the time is good enough for some people, and you can last a long time like that. And look at a company like Walmart. Do they sell the best of anything? I don't think so. But they do a lot of business. It's a $1 billion company. Why? Because people are okay with okay. And it's okay for you to be okay as long as you're doing it intentionally. And you personally, you can be at a high level, but you can still serve the masses who are at an okay level as long as you can speak their language and give them what they want, which is what? Boring things done consistently, which equals special. That's the equation. Recapping today's class. As I just said, boring done consistently equals special. This is about the monotonous, tedious, repetitive consistency that can create amazing outcomes. Point number one, contrary to popular belief, most successful people are boring, repetitive, monotonous, and unexciting. Their life is not one big highlight reel. It's not a big roller coaster. It's not one big party, even though it looks like that from the outside in. It is pretty much 10% highlights, 90% work, if that. Number two, another reason why doing the boring stuff is special by the law of contrast. You just do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Challenge for a lot of people in using the law of contrast is it feels very uncomfortable to be different from the crowd. And this is why there are so few exceptional people in the world, because most people are out here following. Number three, what makes sure boring, monotonous, consistent work special is the fact that other human beings will come to expect, rely, and depend on it. In other words, you are giving the marketplace what it wants. Remember that human beings, like you and me, we are creatures of habit. We like things that we can predict and we know exactly what we're going to get. And being consistent is good enough for 95% of the population. About 5% of people will demand the best. The other 95% will talk about wanting the best, but they will settle for okay as long as you're consistent at it. Again, look at a company like Walmart. They sell a whole bunch of okay stuff and they make billions of dollars doing it because most people are okay with okay. That's just what it is. Text me to get my daily motivation free to your phone every single day. My number is 305-384-6894. And when you are ready, which is now, you are ready to step into my Work on Your Game system. Get coached directly by me, where I take you through the 9-part system so you can develop your game, put your game out into the world, and actually collect ROI from your game. The money, the fame, the attention, the happiness, the joy, whatever it is you want from it. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and join my Work on Your Game system. Work on your game. Dre, all day.